7:04 p.m.
I move.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Holly, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I will move to go into executive session at 7:05 p.m. to discuss litigation and employment history of a particular person or persons. Can I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay. Warren, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. See you in exec, everyone. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, June 23rd. The board has been in executive session discussing litigation and employment history of particular persons. I'd like a motion to reopen the public meeting at 7:33 p.m.
Move.
Thank you,
Second.
Warren. I was going to ask for a second. Vicki seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Holly McCall.
And we've got a special guest from Roaring Brook.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. And thank you, Holly, for doing that and letting the kids take your role as a master of the Pledge of Allegiance. That's been really great. So thank you so much. I would like to start with tonight's President's Report. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. This is our final scheduled meeting of the 2019-2020 school year, and also my final President's Report. It's certainly been a school year like no other, and we have a lot to get to this evening. But I want to say a few words this evening before we head into the summer. I would say summer break, and we all will get one, but believe me, everyone's still going to be working. We have not been together in person since March, but we still had a lot of learning going on. I want to applaud our teachers and administrators and our parents and students for all of their efforts with iLearning. We just sent out an end-of-year survey, thought exchange on our iLearning program, and we very much would like your feedback. The thought exchange closes this Friday, June 26th, so please log on and participate. This information is very valuable as we look ahead to next year. I know we all want to be together in person. Nothing replaces our schools and our human connections, but the governor and the commissioner of education and the virus has a good deal of control over what school will look like next year. I just want everyone to know that we will be working on providing the best education possible, no matter what the circumstances, and you can be sure that you will be hearing from us throughout the summer on that front. We have had a lot of year-end milestones that needed to be reimagined this year, and I want to thank all of our administrators and the faculty and the PTA for helping make those milestones memorable. I have enjoyed the lawn signs for all of our students moving up from elementary to middle school, from middle school to high school, and of course for our seniors graduating high school. A lot has and will be written about the class of 2020. Things were lost, but other things were gained. I know how tirelessly the district and the high school administrators and faculty members worked to celebrate our seniors. From a car parade through town and the high school, to a school bus drop-off of caps and gowns, to faculty members who came up with a video farewell to our seniors, and then to a drive-in style graduation at the train station, complete with jumbotrons, a video from a former president and secretary of state, and an unbelievable fireworks display courtesy of the PTA. Huge shout out to them for that. Really, thank you very much. And our seniors really did feel celebrated, and I know it meant so much to all of them and all of their families. I know the work that went into all of this, while still making sure that our students continued their studies and the district business was taken care of. It was really a Herculean effort, and please know that it was very, very much appreciated. But I cannot end the year without discussing our special board meeting on June 8th and the follow-up from that meeting, which is the focus of the superintendent's report and presentation tonight. I want to applaud and thank everyone who spoke at that meeting, and I want to reaffirm that this board and this administration is committed to addressing racism in our district and our community, and our commitment to making change. I also want to thank all of the students, parents, community members, and alumni who have spoken with us through phone calls, letters, meetings, and focus groups that continue to go on with the Board of Ed. And I want you to know that your input matters and that your input went into our presentation tonight. Our work will be continuing And we want your input to continue as well. We need to be partners here. A recurring theme that has come up in some of our ongoing focus groups is the need for parents and the schools district to work together so that the same message is received by our students in our homes and in our schools. A message that is anti-racist and anti-discrimination of any kind. And a message that there will be consequences for racist and discriminatory behavior. And here's where we need your partnership again. We will be working to review our code of conduct and to make sure there are appropriate consequences for abhorrent behavior and violations of our code of conduct. But we ask that you allow us to enforce our codes and follow through on consequences. We have many wonderful families in this community. Excuse me, but I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say that some families want us to enforce consequences except when those consequences affect their own children. Our administrators frequently spend endless hours and resources dealing with families who do not wish to accept the enforcement of our codes of conduct and don't wish their children to suffer consequences of unacceptable behavior. So I am asking for you to partner with us in this respect also. And I want to say one word about our current administration before signing off for the summer. I have been a Board of Ed member for 3 years now, but I have been a parent in this town for 22 years. I have worn many volunteer hats through my time here, and while I have adored and supported many teachers and administrators who have passed through this district, there are times when I have not supported certain faculty members or administrators, and I've at times been vocal in my criticisms. I am a straight shooter. So when I speak of the administration in place here, right now, our Superintendent Christine Ackerman, our Assistant Superintendents Tony Sinanis and Adam Pease and John Chow, and our high school principal Andrew Corsilia, and I say that they are good people, I mean it. This is not the same administrative team many of you have dealt with years prior. I see the work, I see the purpose, I see where they are coming from and where they want to go, and it is a good place. We are all going to make mistakes here as we try to do the hard work that is not always comfortable and not always easy for everyone. But I invite you to hold us accountable, and I ask that you trust that we will all do our best to keep pushing and keep moving the work forward. So I'm asking again for your partnership and also for your patience. We have a long road ahead here, trying to open our schools, trying to serve all of our current students who have had a very challenging year, and trying to change the climate in this district. We will keep working, and I hope that you will all keep working with us. It has been a privilege serving as president this year, and on behalf of the board, I want to wish everyone a restful and restorative summer. So thank you. And next, we are moving on in the president's report to two resolutions that Warren and Vicki should be introducing. They've been working on this as our policy representatives, so I wanted them to talk about this a little bit.
Vicki, I'll let you take the lead.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So Warren and I worked on 2 resolutions. So the resolutions are a statement from the board. They're a statement of values and goals and sort of guide to the administration, and the administration is going to present a plan to us. So Warren and I worked on this, and this is really, it could be a work in progress, or if the board is comfortable with it, you can, make changes here. This can be a working meeting, or we can postpone it till we meet the next time. But what I'll do, without further ado, is I'll just read through the resolution. I'm reading my own text right now. I don't know if this is up on the screen in case we want to make changes. I already saw a change that I do want to make. So I just want to make sure that everybody has it and can read along. So I guess I'll just read through it for everyone to hear. So the title is the Chappaqua Central School District Board of Education Resolution on Anti-Racism, Diversity, and Social Justice Curriculum and Instruction. Okay. Whereas the Board of Education of the Chappaqua Central School District is united with our administration, staff, and community in repudiating racism and discrimination in any form. Hold on, I just lost my screen.
Because somebody,
Christine,
Is someone
I was sharing.
on the screen?
I was sharing the resolution, Vicky, with the audience, but if you need to be able to see your screen in order for you to keep reading, then I won't do that.
You can try to do that, and I'll try to read my screen. Do you want to do that? So everyone.
Yeah, I thought you wanted me to, so let me try
Yeah.
it again.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's try that again, and let
Okay.
me try to do my own thing here. Okay. So I'll start again. Whereas the Board of Education of the Chappaqua Central School District, the board, is united with our administration, staff, and community in repudiating racism and discrimination in any form. Whereas the board is resolute in its commitment to foster an actively anti-racist culture and climate in our school district and broader community. Whereas the board believes that our students must be educated to recognize, reject, and stand up to all racism and hate. Whereas the board is committed to address and support anti-racist, diversity, and social justice education in our schools. And whereas the board recognizes the central role of educators in public education in molding future generations of citizens who will be informed, ethical, moral, engaged, and active participants in society. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the board directs the Chappaqua Central School District administration and staff to, and number one, engage in a comprehensive review and revision of the K-12 curriculum to ensure broad-based instruction on systemic racism in its historical context, its influence on current events, and its impacts on the lives of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Two, ensure that the curriculum addresses racism and the dynamics of intersectionality and its disparate impacts along race, class, gender identity, and other identity markers. Three, ensure that classroom practices, activities, and assignments are free of racial and cultural bias, whether overt, implicit, or unconscious. Four, provide continuous training for all staff on recognizing, identifying, and addressing overt, implicit, and unconscious racism in our school curriculum, in their own thinking, in classroom practices, and student and staff behavior. Five, provide all staff with the tools and necessary knowledge to actively implement strategies to report and eliminate overt, implicit, and unconscious racism and racist behavior and attitudes in our schools. And six, work with all segments of the school district community to establish and maintain a school culture and climate that is actively anti-racist and upholds dignity and respect for all individuals. And be it further resolved that the board calls on the school administration to present to the board specific action steps together with a system of accountability toward achievement of the above stated goals. So I have another paragraph that I wanted to add here, and we could talk about that, after, I'll get comments, but I'll just state it here. I wanted to insert a paragraph 4, which is, and this is based on some of the focus groups that I heard in the past couple of days. Ensure that the curriculum, teaching, and learning practices, classroom activities, and interaction among students and teachers are approached with compassion and recognition of human dignity and mutual respect.
I mean,
And,
the only thing I would add, Vicky, is thank you for adding that. We developed and edited this for the board and for the administration, but I would say some of the information we put into this came from the focus groups that we had, and we've had a number of focus groups. We're not finished those. It's not over. We're going to continue using focus groups, but we learned a lot from the focus groups, and that helped drive some part of these points in the resolution. So I wanted to thank the community for participating to give us input that we could use.
And that extra paragraph I added was really based on really important comments that I received on the teaching of certain topics in our classrooms, such as colonialism or activities to do with slavery that really didn't take into account the impacts on the students in that class. So we can talk about that in more detail, but anyhow, I just wanted to get comments from the other board members on that resolution.
Vicky, I was in 2 focus groups with you recently, and I I heard the same thing that you did about teaching with compassion, and I'm very glad you added that. I actually really like this resolution, and I honestly don't have any changes.
Yes, I think you guys did a very good job on it. I think we've all been talking about some themes that have emerged as we've talked to a bunch of community members, and we're going to finish this work, so it's not over yet, but that you do see patterns emerging, you see concerns emerging, and we see areas that we need to focus on, and I think that you and Warren did a very good job of putting that into this resolution. So I thank you very much. I think it's really excellent.
Okay, any other comments from anyone, administrators as well?
Did we actually move this yet?
Not yet.
No.
Well, we were just reading it, so
I think you guys did a really good job. My only question is strictly procedural, because I like the resolution a lot, which is, Vicki, I think the paragraph you added orally is excellent. Do we have to have that in writing all together before we can approve it, or are we good to go? This is really just a procedural.
We can make a motion to approve the resolution as amended.
As amended?
as amended.
Okay.
And where, Vicki, where exactly did you want to include that? Because I know it will change our numbering. So I think
Number
you said
4. I had asked if we were able to change the resolution here at the meeting, because sometimes when we're in person, we can do it on the screen and we can add and revise at the meeting. Is that possible, so that we could see what we've got, so that you can see it? Or if you feel it's not necessary, we could pass it as revised, and that would be paragraph 4.
I'm fine with it.
and then everything would bump down.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
I
Thank-
move that we.
I think we need to move it onto the table to start
Yes.
I
Yeah.
move that we accept the resolution as amended.
with.
Second?
I will second that.
Someone else can second.
I think we
Yeah,
all tried.
Yeah, that's okay. I will second that. All in favor of the resolution as
Discussion.
amended?
Discussion first. Do we have any more discussion?
Well, I didn't ask again because I assumed that we had sort of discussed prior, but we can go ahead and discuss in addition if anyone has any more comments before we pass it.
No, just thank you for all the work you did on this.
Thank you, Vicki.
Okay, all in favor of the resolution as amended?
Aye.
Hey.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, now we have another resolution, and this is the one creating the Community Board Advisory Committee. And, okay, I'm just reading it now. Are you putting it on the screen?
Yeah, hold on one second. I'm having a hard time here. I got too much.
And then it will take me a little bit of time to get mine up.
Okay.
Okay, hang on a second. Okay, so I also changed the last paragraph of this one, but I'll get to it. I'll get to the changes when we get to it. Okay, so this is the Chappaqua Central School District Board of Education resolution on Community Advisory Committee on Anti-Racism, Diversity, and Social Justice. Whereas the Board of Education is committed to fostering an actively anti-racist culture and climate in our schools and school district community, whereas in furtherance of these goals, the board is committed to a broad and comprehensive review of school district curriculum and instruction, classroom practices, and activities. Whereas the board recognizes the imperative need to address overt, implicit, and unconscious acts and attitudes that create a racist and hostile environment for our students, staff, and community. And whereas the board values community and student voice and input in our processes, now therefore be it resolved that the board hereby establishes a Board of Education Community Advisory Committee on Anti-Racism, Diversity, and Social Justice, the committee, to be co-chaired by, and there should be 2 board members here, for the purpose of presenting recommendations to the board on goals, implementation, accountability measures, and methods of feedback related to promoting an anti-racist culture and climate in our school district community. And be it further resolved that members of the committee shall consist of, and this is where I changed it. I changed it to a balance of individuals who will provide a broad range of cultural diversity of different races, ethnicities, ages, genders, and sexual orientation and identity within the school district community, and who shall be announced at the soonest practicable opportunity. The last community advisory committee we had took members from school-related organizations such as the PTA, the town, the sports boosters, Interfaith Council, the rec department, etc. I think that this is different, and I think that we really need to have diversity, racial and cultural diversity on this committee. So that's why I changed the last paragraph.
Okay.
So any thoughts? Any thoughts?
I like the way that you outlined the type of diverse participants to be on this committee. I think you and I had briefly discussed that earlier today, and I like the way that you've represented it there. And I have a question. We wouldn't even if we pass this today, we wouldn't be assigning any members from the board yet. I assume we do that when we assign all committees in another week or two.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be a good time.
Yeah, I wanted to check on the timing, make sure we didn't need to fill that in tonight.
Right. I was going
Right. No, I think that's beyond the scope of this meeting tonight.
Okay.
I was going to say, I just didn't know if for purposes of passing the resolution, as opposed to leaving blanks there, we would say to be co-chaired by 2 sitting board members to be determined or something like that, so that our resolution is complete without blank spaces.
Okay.
You can do that.
I think that should be to be co-chaired by 2 sitting
Board
board
members
to be determined.
2 sitting board or we could just say to be co-chaired by 2 sitting board members, comma, for the purpose, because then we can choose that.
Okay. Yes. So then we can pass it without blanks.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Jane. Great
Okay, good.
suggestion.
Okay, great. Does anyone else, well, we can, if someone wants to move the resolution.
I move that we accept this resolution as amended.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it unless somebody else really wanted to.
Okay, go ahead, Holly. And is there anything else anyone wishes to discuss before we vote?
Vicki, I'm sorry. Could you just read the change? Could you read your new language one more time for me, please?
Sure. The last paragraph, be it further resolved that members of the committee shall consist of a balance of individuals who will provide a broad range of cultural diversity of different races, ethnicities, ages, genders, and sexual orientation and identity within the school district community, and who shall be announced at the soonest practicable opportunity.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions or comments? All in favor of passing the resolution, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Resolution has passed. Thank you so much, Vicki and Warren, for your work on this. It is much appreciated.
Thank you to the board.
So that is the conclusion of the president's report for tonight, and we are going to move on to Christine and the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane. So I just want to begin by expressing my gratitude to the board. Jane, you've been an amazing president for us, and we appreciate all the support that you have provided both Lisa and I as we navigated this school year. And I want to thank Warren and Vicki and Hillary and Holly for your service as well. You are always available, ready to help support us, to meet, to tackle really difficult and challenging situations on behalf of the community. And I want to express that gratitude to you tonight at our last meeting of the 1920 academic year. I also want to thank our community for their support for our budget. This is our first public meeting since our budget was passed, and I want to congratulate Vicki and Jane for continuing to serve on the board. We're really excited to be able to continue to work with you from the district standpoint, so congratulations. I want to take a moment to thank Lori Towson. She's been the president of the PTA and has been a wonderful partner to to us and to me. And I want to thank her for her leadership over the course of this year. And I look forward to working with Kelly Mofield in our new school year. I want to also thank our parents, our students, and our faculty for working together the past 3 months in a way that none of us envisioned would happen at the start of the school year. As we wind down here on the spring semester, I can't tell you, I don't really have enough words to express my gratitude for the way that we've been able to support our students through this really difficult time together. So thank you. So I'd like to talk about a few things before we move into our presentation this evening. This is the part, I know we have a lot of people on the meeting that normally aren't here. So usually I do a community update and then we go into our presentation. So I'd like to do that at this time. There's a few topics that I know parents are wondering about, and we also want to introduce a new member of our staff. So please allow me to do that at this time. So the first thing I'd like to share is that our buildings are reopening. Our buildings and district offices are reopening next week, but we'll be doing all the district business with our families and with our 10-month staff outside of the building. So while our 12-month staff will be reporting to work, we'll be answering the phones, we will be inside our offices getting ready to start the new school year. If you need something and you need to visit the school, please call ahead, and all of that work will be facilitated outside of the building until we have better direction on how we're supposed to move forward as a school community with opening. So all school districts are required to have a reentry team to plan for September. So I wanted to share with the community who would be members of our reentry team when we begin to plan for September. So we have representatives from the district office, we have faculty, parents, and administrators, and we also have our school physician and our architect that will be working together to come up with our September plan. Now, our planning process and that work will begin in July after the Board of Regents provides some directive, which they shared with us would be coming either on July 13th or July 14th. Absent their directive, it's difficult for us to plan for what September should look like because we don't know what their baseline expectations are, and we haven't received any baseline expectations from Albany. But I want to reassure you, which we've been sharing along the way, we are well prepared to open up based on multiple scenarios that might exist due to what the regulatory language is that's shared with us, because we've been able to purchase ahead equipment and supplies in anticipation of fully opening or partially opening. We've already met with our transportation company to prepare for opening. So we've been able to do a lot of the legwork without direction, but the real meat of what we need to do, we need the baseline expectations from Albany in order to set that work forward. So as soon as we begin planning, I'll send a notice out to the community, but I do want the community to understand we have the structure in place to begin that work immediately as soon as we're able to. I also wanted to share, the Governor Cuomo had shared in one of his executive orders that he would allow us to have extended school year in our buildings. So we are going to move forward and have our special education program, our 6-week program, run out of Seven Bridges Middle School. And the way that, absent any kind of regulatory language from Albany regarding how to do this, we're going to follow our child care procedures, which were in place when we began the pandemic. And we've been working closely with our district physician to be able to support this in a way that's safe and that takes into account what needs to be happening within that building so instruction can take place effectively. So I did want to share that with the community. This will be our first step in integrating students back into our buildings, and we look forward to seeing our students over the course of the summer. And then if language changes or adjustments come from Albany about how they want us to move forward as they begin to release information, we'll make real-time adjustments to our program. But I appreciate our special education staff and our families for working together to figure out a way to make this happen that makes sense for our students over the summer who need support services. We have a lot of professional development on this agenda, which is commonplace after we pass the budget. So I asked Adam if he could just briefly highlight some of the resolutions in the 5 sections for you right now. So Adam?
Yeah, thank you. So you can see the resolution numbers next to the pictures. I tried to just cram them all onto one slide, except for one pair, which we're going to do some work attached to the next presentation. So we'll introduce that resolution then. But we have Shelley with us for math consulting. She's been working with the district for a number of years, and annually the board has approved that agreement with Shelley to be able to support our math and focus curriculum and our big ideas curriculum in the middle school. So she works with our K-8 teachers in mathematics. That's 5.6. And we have Greg Duncan, who the district has worked with for many years. He is an expert in world language curriculum, and he's been working with our staff at Greeley. We hope to expand his work into our middle schools as well. So that's a name that you are probably familiar with. 5.8 is a new name for Chappaqua, but somebody that I've worked with for a number of years. Sharon was our department chair and excellent teacher at the previous district where I worked. And she and I actually co-taught a variety of courses together for many years. She and I offered our new teacher orientation program, which was a 30-hour course to onboard our new teachers. So she and I co-taught that class for many years together when I was a high school principal, and then when I continued on as an assistant superintendent. So I am thrilled. Sharon's now retiring from that district as a teacher, so she's available to do some consulting. So I'm excited to have her join us and support our new teachers. Project 720 is what we've named our 4 years of supporting our new staff members. There's 720 days of probation, so approximately. So we're calling that Project 720. Then 5.9 is a next generation science standards consultant. So we're doing quite a bit of work in our middle schools and high schools for next gen science standards alignment. So we have Vince Manguso, who's an author and well-known science curriculum expert who's going to help us with that. 5.10 is Brain Spring. There's some training and some materials for implementation of phonics first in second grade. You'll remember we had those terrific students join us earlier in the school year to go through some of their phonics first learning that they had done, and we're going to expand that into second grade next year. So this resolution will allow us to train our second grade teachers, and they're prepared to do that virtually if we need to. And then 5.11, 5.11 is Kate Roberts, who is a published author in a variety of English and writing and reading texts that she's published, and she's done some work, quite a bit of work extensively in the region and also with our teachers, very well respected really across the country for her work. So she's going to help us with middle school and high school English curriculum. So that's 5.11.
I've done. Okay, good. We're happy tonight to be able to introduce to the community our new Assistant Superintendent for Pupil Personnel Services, and this is Ellen Dougherty, and I know we're going to move her into the Zoom in a second so the community can meet her. Ellen was a part of our search process, and she was our finalist, but we didn't know when her start date was going to be due to the pandemic, and we are fortunate to be able to have her begin with us in September and engage in some of the leadership development work that we'll be talking about in our presentation in a few moments over the summer. So Ellen, if you could raise your hand so we can move you into the panel, and I'll introduce you to the community. So, and then maybe David or Adam can move you in. So Ellen has been the principal at White Plain High School, where she oversaw a staff of over 200 faculty members, including 9 administrators. And before that, she was the high school principal at John Jay High School. She spent many years in Katona-Lewisboro in the Special Education Services Department and has extensive experience developing special education programs and providing curriculum development and oversight for school districts from the elementary to the secondary level. Before that, she was a program coordinator and social worker at Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. She has a reputation of establishing a culture of respect and collaboration between and amongst administrators, faculty, staff, and students and their families. She is an experienced educator, and we look so forward to welcoming her to Chappaqua Central School District. So there's Ellen in the Zoom. So Ellen, would you like to just say hi? And we're so happy to have you with us today.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm thrilled to be joining such a fine learning community and to have been witness to the statements made by Board of Education members at the beginning of this meeting. Makes me even more excited about coming to such a fine community to do the work that you all describe. I am just thrilled and excited to be in a community with such a supportive group of parents and such really distinguished students. So I can't wait for September 1st.
Thank you, Ellen. We really appreciate you joining us today. And I know there'll be moments over the summer where Ellen will be able to interact with both the board, the leadership team, and the larger community. So thank you, Ellen.
Welcome, Ellen. We're excited to have you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me just go back to my presentation because we have two other administrators on the agenda tonight that we will be appointing. So, okay, give me 1 second. Let's see here, that is not. Okay, so now, Tony, could you please introduce our new assistant principals?
Sure, I am excited to do so. So we are appointing two new assistant principals tonight. One at Bell Middle School to partner with Joseph Wiener, our new principal there at Bell. Her name is Nicole Kelly. Nicole's in the audience. We're not going to move her over to the panel, but she is here, so waving to Nicole and welcome aboard. Nicole comes to us from Hendrick Hudson School District, and she's got extensive experience at the middle school level, ELA teacher, AIS support specialist, has taken on various leadership roles in the district, also has been an athletic coach in her experience there. So really excited to have Nicole join the team at Bell and to partner with Joseph, and she will be starting with us on July 1st, and she'll also have some time to partner with Tim and transition with him at the front end. So welcome, Nicole. We are excited to have you. Do you want to say anything, Christine? Sorry. No, okay.
What I was going to share is what we're grateful for is that our new administrators will be a part of our leadership development over the summer, and that isn't always the case based on their previous employment requirements, but we were very fortunate that our whole team will be able to be together to do the work that we need to be engaging in over the course of July and August. So thank you, and we're happy to have you.
And we are also appointing tonight our new assistant principal at Horace Greeley High School. That's Siska Broussard. Siska comes from Bard College High School in Queens, one of the most prestigious high schools in Queens. She's got a PhD in something scientific that I don't even understand. She's got extensive background teaching high school science, and Siska really just was amazing to get to know over the process, and just see her evolve in her leadership and articulate the experiences that she's had at her current school. So we are excited to welcome Siska aboard, and she will be officially starting with us at the end of July, but she will be part of our administrative retreat. She's also here in the audience, so a nice collective wave to Siska and welcome aboard.
And then I also wanted to mention on the agenda tonight, the PTA is donating $15,000 towards our Sustainability Research Center, and we've engaged in conversations around this throughout the school year. But for those of you who haven't been a part of those meetings, we're looking at constructing a multi-faceted greenhouse for sustainability research in the middle of the Greeley campus connected to the building. And we so appreciate the PTA's donation to support that work. Okay, so let me stop this presentation. That was the superintendent's update, and now let me move to our presentation for the evening. So give me 1 second. Okay, let me present. Okay, so first of all, before I start, I want to begin by thanking so many people have been a part of the conversations that we've had over the past 2 weeks and have provided the feedback necessary to present to the Board of Education a pathway forward based on all the information that we have come to learn since our presentation to the community and the feedback we received on June 8th. So I'd like to thank our students, our parents, our staff, our alumni. All your good thinking has contributed to what I'm about to share with you tonight. And while I know it's not going to be perfect, I know that collectively together we'll be able to move forward in the direction that our students deserve us to be. So what I do want to share with you is I know that we have students who do not feel valued for who they are in this district. And we know we need to take an anti-racism stance and develop a curriculum that supports this position. We know that many of our Black and Brown students are struggling in our schools with finding the support that they need and deserve. We know we need to diversify our staff. We know we need to be aggressive in how we approach social justice education and that pedagogical those pedagogical curricular decisions. We also know that our staff, including our administrative team, need expert training and support to do this work. And we also know that we must do this together. This has to be a collaborative process. So when we think about how we need to move forward, there is a gap between what we would like to be and where we currently are. So we pledge to act with purpose, to create a plan to drive change, to accelerate our response. We know we need to move quickly because our students deserve better, and to show measured progress with the steps that we take to address the gap that exists and to move forward in a direction that our students deserve us to be in. I want to talk just a little bit for some context of work that happened prior to the June 8th meeting over the course of this year. So over the course, and we're going to talk in much more detail about many of the aspects of what I'm going to share with you throughout this presentation. So first, we created a CHAP Equity Pride Fellowship. We engaged in diversity recruitment and hiring initiatives. We developed a partnership with Facing History, and they're here tonight, so they will talk about their program and their curriculum with the board. We have continual work with our social emotional learning program in terms of our alignment across this district and the ruler approach. And part of that approach defines what we would like our communities to be like for our students, with our students. And we facilitated anti-racism virtual professional development sessions for our staff when civil unrest started to percolate in the country. We also provided district level support for the BSU and for Unity Day. We supported student-led equity work. We've supported faculty-led curriculum diversification initiatives. And we have executed a two-pronged process when students and staff feel like they have been victims of discrimination. And what that means is that the principal has addressed it at the building level, and there's been a secondary analysis at the district level to make sure that it's been handled appropriately. Now, between June 8th and today, I want to share with you what's been taking place in our district. So all the students at Greeley were addressed by our principal. Our faculty have had meetings with their principals, and we've had focus groups with staff and departments. We have facilitated Unity Day with the BSU. The Board of Education has held and are continuing to hold focus groups for our community. We have held focus groups with Black alumni, the BSU, and our staff of color. We have provided ongoing professional development for our faculty. We have secured professional development for our leadership team, and we have investigated and addressed additional incidents that have been shared with the administration. So our framework for moving forward is equity, education, and evolution. In terms of equity, we want to make sure that every member of our community is treated equally and justly so they feel that they are valued. We want to ensure that our curriculum and our faculty are reflective of our global community. And we want to make sure and that our curriculum accurately reflects our rich history and diversity. And we want to make sure in terms of our evolution that we set short and long-term goals and we measure our progress and we report that progress to our community. So part of what we felt would be helpful for our work is if we had questions, guiding questions to push our work forward in these three particular areas. So in terms of equity, and we'll come back to these proposed actions as we move through the presentation, is when we think about how we want to create an equitable environment for our students. We feel like we need to consider how we believe our communities should look within the context of each school, and we would use our ruler program and our charters to define that. How can we make sure that our code of conduct provides an environment where students feel that they are being supported and that we're addressing behavior that is egregious and inappropriate? How can we develop a system of support for our Black and brown students in an environment where they don't have many role models who look like them? And how can we increase our expertise on our staff to help support this work, and allocating a member of our school district to help facilitate the type of professional work that needs to happen in this district around equity and diversity and social justice issues. In terms of education, when we think about our professional learning and how can we diversify our experiences and how can we enhance our curriculum, we're thinking about what are some renowned experts that can come help us facilitate work with our faculty, parents, and students. What aspects of our curriculum do we need to analyze and what revisions need to be made? How do we diversify our staff through our hiring practices? And how can we articulate and address our digital citizenship curriculum as it relates to being respectful and ensuring that all students feel welcomed in our community? In terms of our evolution, how do we appropriately measure our goals and progress? Our thinking revolves around developing the Board of Education Advisory Committee, which was approved right before this presentation. Reporting quarterly on our progress, reevaluating our strategic plan to determine if equity and social justice education should be identified as one of our target areas. Revisiting the Board of Education strategic question, applicable policies, and our mission statement. So one of our first steps in our work was securing a professional development leadership experience for administrative team this summer. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second because we have invited Doctors Brenda and Franklin Campbell-Jones to come and speak with the Board of Education about the work that they see themselves engaging in with not only our administrative team this summer, but with our Board of Education. So let me just stop sharing. And Adam, do you want to move the team in?
Yep, I see Brenda and Franklin are here. I think they just need to unmute and turn on their video, and we should be all set.
I think we did it.
Is Shannon there?
Okay.
Okay.
We can see you and hear you. Thank you.
Hi.
Oh,
And
We're
gonna
looking for
join
Shannon.
Shannon Keeney.
Oh, yeah, I see her. Hold on, let me move her in.
Okay.
She has her hand up.
All right.
Wait, Adam, I think you need to move her in, please.
Yep.
Okay.
Hello.
There you are.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
So we thought it would be helpful if you can share based on, we've had extensive conversations with the team. So maybe you can share a little bit with the Board of Education and the community, the work that you see yourselves engaged in with our leadership team over the summer. And Brenda and Franklin have worked with other school districts in Westchester and across the country on, so go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. Well, we work, as we've shared before, with the leadership team, with school systems around the country and also in Canada. We've been working on this particular topic now for about 20 plus years. And in fact, Shannon was in one of our original workshops in Maryland when we first came to the East Coast from California. And she was a primary school teacher, and now she does workshops like this full time, in Howard County, Maryland. So we worked in California, Minnesota, New York, as you've said, New Jersey, Arkansas, all over the country. The need is great, obviously, but we've had great success in using a model that stresses working inside out, meaning you have to know yourself well enough to do the work in order to do the work. And unless people bring themselves into the space, then they can't accomplish all those wonderful things that you just spent a lot of time developing an umbrella and an anchor for. Which, by the way, we'd like to compliment you on that. That was beautiful work and provides a great umbrella to do the kind of work that we're talking about right now. So we use a model, a framework, cultural proficiency, as a way of giving a structure so that school systems, people in school systems can actually have deep conversation about themselves and how they go about doing this work around equity so that they can then begin to work on curriculum and work on instruction, policies and practices. And so that structure really helps them do the work in a way that's very productive. And we found that over time, you build sustaining change, lasting change. It's not a quick hit. It's something that lasts way beyond our presence in your school system.
Culture proficiency has one of the tools, there's 4 tools, and one of the tools is the continuum. And the work that you were talking about with regard to anti-racism, social justice, those issues rest on the cultural proficiency continuum, that last area. The continuum goes from being destructive to being proficient. And the piece that you added that is so critical and is a critical piece of cultural proficiency is the manner in which you do your work. So you can do all of this anti-racism work, and you can have a variety of people to join you. But if you don't add that piece that you added, which is critical, where you said, approach with compassion, dignity, and respect. And that's an integral piece of the model that we use in the anti-racism work. Additionally, over the years, we have developed rubrics that we use to help teachers look at a curriculum, not to go and purchase other curriculum, but to look at what they already have to make it more culturally competent for the students that they serve, as well as rubrics that help boards, administrators to take a look at their policies that they have created to make sure that they are just and equitable. As you've mentioned, the work is vast. It's a lot of work, but as Shannon Keeney can attest, we started in Howard County because they had cross burnings in lawns in this county. And we were called in to help them with it. And they have gone from cross burnings to a lot of competent work that they're doing in the district with over 50,000 kids.
So I think we'll pause, and we could talk about this topic for a long time. You can see.
Get a little excited.
Get a little excited about it, and let you ask any questions that you know about the work and what we do.
We did, Brendan Franklin, we did buy a copy of your book for the Board of Education and the leadership team, so it's on its way.
Okay.
Oh, great.
Great.
Yeah, the whole idea behind that book was to try to share with, in general, how we do what we do, because people always ask, how do you get these kinds of results? And it's a difficult question when you're in the middle of it, trying to figure that out. But the whole idea was to sort of pull back the curtain so that you can now begin to do this, hopefully alongside of us, because we need all the help that we can get to approach this topic. It is humongous. And the work that you did, that resolution was beautiful work.
Wow, that was great.
Thank you. I just want to say that I really liked hearing your thoughts about a continuum or continuing, because I think we really want to avoid a situation where we have sort of, tokenized discussions that are not really authentic and embedded in the curriculum and the work in the classroom. So, I think that would be really important.
Yeah.
One of the things that, among the very many things we would struggle with, in a community like ours, I think most people feel that they are very accepting. And then we have, really some very bad incidents, and, we can see where the problems are. But the challenge, I think, that I see is how to address people who feel that they're not racist, and therefore it's not really something that they need to think about. And the difference between being not racist versus being anti-racist, which is, a very current theme these days. But it's a sort of casualness and sort of unconscious biases that I think are a big challenge. And how do you get people to know what they don't know?
Right.
Well, we do a lot of work with values, beliefs, and assumptions. And we use one of Peter Senge's models called the Ladder of Inference in how to, and we teach people how to ask questions to surface those values, beliefs, and assumptions, and how we get to certain conclusions. And it's through this questioning process causes people to really think about their own thinking. And that takes skill. And for many, it takes, which the skill is easy to teach. The problem that we have found, especially in working with educators, if you don't already have a culture that supports critique, then we've got to help build the kind of culture where critique becomes the norm. And people, honestly, they'll say things like, well, I don't want people not to like me, and I don't want to say this because, and if I ask a question, what if they don't sit with me, in the teacher's room, or whatever. And being a former principal and area superintendent, I know exactly what that feels like. But as we work with people through the years, people begin to change their values and beliefs around their culture being the way we do things around here. And then pretty soon critique becomes normalized. It does not happen, overnight, but it does happen. And that's how people then begin to see and to know what they don't know. Because what we want to do is exactly what you said, is to stop that dendrite experience in the brain that just taps all the time by doing the same thing all the time. And we want to interrupt that in the brain so that people go, oh, without fighting, without argument, but to stop them from continuing that thinking, because we as educators have contributed to that. Because normally when people say things or do things, we just ignore them, and then that just becomes the norm, and we want to interrupt that norm.
We call it a 2-year-old conversation. And the 2-year-old conversation is the annoying question conversation, because the 2-year-old is always trying to get at what you're trying to do. And most adults don't realize what they're doing in the first place. And so that's a part of what you're talking about. People are doing things unconsciously, and for them, it's the correct way to do it. Until you start having a 2-year-old conversation, people don't even realize what they're doing. And a lot of things that they're doing and what they've been taught happens to be racist kinds of things. They're racist, aggressive kinds of things. What we've had here in all of this tragedy is sort of a wake-up call that at least caused people to stop and pause. The beautiful thing about what you've done is put an anchor in place now that will allow people now to say, okay, now we have permission to move forward. And having that permission to move forward now sort of excuses it takes away the reason of why I shouldn't participate. And so right now, what you have just done is sort of like push the boat out into the ocean and say, okay, let's set sail. And everybody's waiting to see where are we going to navigate to. And what we usually find out is that we try to get you to navigate back to yourself, because most people don't realize that they want a curriculum to do what they should do.
Yeah, if I might.
Yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Holly.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, so hi, Shannon Keeney, an associate of Brendan Franklin, who I met 13 years ago, and, my life changed 13 years ago, so I'm grateful for them for that. Just looking at your framework connected to equity, education, and evolution, when we're talking about what Brendan Franklin are talking about, this idea of being in relation with someone, and understanding self and others. So helping groups build an efficacy to start talking about race, start talking about social economics, start talking about gender, and not move through that in a confident way when it's like fear or guilt or shame or things like that, so we can engage in a healthy way and ask questions. So bringing that to the surface when we know ourselves and we know our colleagues better, we're less likely to want to harm them through microaggressions or, outright aggressions, right? So we want to connect with them in a way, and we can build that critical lens to be able to give that feedback for the better of the group. And with that education, that curriculum instruction focus, not just buying, like Brenda said, another curriculum, but looking at how we're delivering the curriculum or what's a part of that. I like to think about it as like windows and mirrors. We have to give windows into other people's experiences, but also have mirrors that reflect our own experiences to see ourselves as a part of the process. So that just framework was really, really resonated with the work that we do.
I don't know. I was just going to say, I know, well, thanks to Adam saying that we're all going to be getting books soon that we can go through. So I know some of this information will be answered. But, for me, one of the things, the topics that we've been talking about is doing this K to 12. I mean, I'm curious if this work is easier to start younger, like we've already all been discussing recently. But the younger kids, they need a different vocabulary, and that vocabulary and our expectations and things will change, obviously, as they get older. So I'm curious, it may be in the book, but I'm curious how you work and modulate this, I guess, from the younger grades up to the high schoolers.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, actually, it's a both and. Yes, younger kids get it. We can go into a first grade classroom and we don't even have to prep them to get ready to talk. They just talk.
They talk. They like to talk, right?
The problem, the people that need to model for the children are the adults. And if we do not make a significant influence on the adults, then the kids' behavior won't change, because kids model what they see in the grown-ups. Right. So if you have cliques on staffs, you're going to have cliques in the school.
Right.
And so, yes, kids are much easier, and yes, adults have got to get with the program.
Yeah, and there's a biological, physiological aspect of this too. the brain is in the process of development during those years, and it mirrors what it sees. So kids mimic the adults they're around.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives us some window into the work that we're doing, is that the adults are establishing the framework from how the kids are to act and behave.
Mm-hmm.
And the younger the kids are. Now, just case in point on that, we work with one school where we're working with a high school in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids, we went through this whole process with the students at this high school. And by the time they had gone through all of the training with us, they got to a point of action and they said, "You'll never get our teachers to change."
Mm.
They said, "But we will." And so they took all the things that we taught them and they did all of the in-services for the year to the adults in the school.
Wow.
The kids did it.
It was fabulous.
It was unbelievable. And the approach was, if we do it, they'll listen to us. But if you go and talk with them, they're not going to listen to you. And sure enough, they turned that school around.
That's right.
I have a question for any of you, Brenda, Franklin, Shannon. What kind of speed bumps or challenges would you expect us to face? I know you've already, thought that we've got a nice umbrella and a good anchor, but you know us a little bit now. What do you think?
The speed bumps you can expect, people complaining, "I don't want to do this, it's too hard, give me a program." I thought that, we could just go buy this anti-racist book and it would tell us everything we needed to do. I'm not prejudiced. I treat all my kids the same. I don't know why the board is making me do this.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the speed bumps you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
Some administrators, some teachers will say, "This too shall pass."
Mm-hmm.
As soon as we get a new whatever, a new president, a new superintendent, a new board, a new whatever, we can go back to our old ways.
Wow.
And so you're going to hear those things. And matter of fact, in one of the districts, when we were the superintendent, they were hearing all of these things. And I went and talked with the superintendent, and he came to one of the meetings, and because we had already spent 5 days with him and his board and everybody. And he says, "I know you guys don't want to do this. I know you don't like it. This is the direction we're going. And there are plenty of places that will take you if this isn't for you. But every single person in this district is going to spend time with the Campbell Joneses, because I want our kids to be treated better." So you can expect a lot of, I'm going to call it resistance just for now, but what we say is that people really aren't resistant. They're really rubbing up against what they value versus the value that's being in place.
Mm-hmm.
So you talked in one of your slides about your espoused values and the values in use. And so what we do our best to do is to help you see your espoused values, the values that are in use, and then bring the two together so that what you espouse is exactly what you do. And that is hard for some people.
And it's going to be paramount that the board and the district leadership have consistent language, use of consistent language, so that when one speaks, it sounds like the other one has spoken. It's going to be so critical that you be able to do that everyone is on board in using the same language about where you're going and what you're doing.
Yeah, and for many of your community members, this feels real urgent. So what you'll hear from them is that you're not going fast enough. And then from some community members, you'll hear, just as someone said earlier, "I don't know why we have to do this anyway. Everything is just fine."
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have quite a few speed bumps. And we'll help you with the skills to get over those speed bumps.
Exactly what I wanted to hear.
So you don't wreck your car. You're gonna go over real slow.
So, I don't have a question. However, I'd just like to thank you for coming to our district, and I personally look forward to working with you and learning from you.
Thank you. We're excited too. We're very excited.
We're so appreciative that you're going to work with us, because we know we need help, and we're really excited to work with you and start that work over the summer. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to meet you here.
Pleasure to meet you.
Really looking forward to
We're going to zoom you out and we'll keep going with our
Okay.
So, one of the questions the audience may have is, well, what about the faculty? I see what you're doing work with the leadership team this summer. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we see ourselves being able to support our faculty, but we know that in order to do that work effectively, we have to have faculty voice within those conversations. So when we move a little bit more in the presentation, Tony will talk a little bit about how we see ourselves supporting our faculty in their ongoing professional development work as well. So let me keep going here. Hold on a second. I got to present. And let me just move down. There's probably a better way to do this, but okay. All right, so, and Tony, you're up now. So go ahead.
Thank you, Christine. So, one of the most important things I feel like we definitely want to spotlight in our presentation tonight is that the work around equity and inclusivity, and particularly racial inclusivity, is something that we've been talking a lot about for the last couple of years. Adam, John, Christine, and I were planning for fellowships during the 18-19 school year for this school year, and we were kicking around ideas about what we could focus on, and they indulged me and let me put this notion of equity on the table, and the idea grew from conversation, and then early this year, to help inform the thinking around what our CHAP Equity Pride Fellowship would be, which Pride stands for Promoting Racial Inclusivity, Diversity, and Equity. I was able to partner with Tanuki at the high school. She is the advisor to our Black Student Union. I wanted to make sure that I spent time listening to our students of color, particularly our Black and Brown kids, to hear about their experiences, to inform the work of the fellowship, to think about where we needed to kind of anchor ourselves, what we needed to be thinking about. And so in January, I shared information, finally developed the application for the fellowship, and tried to capture what it is that we were going to be focusing on, right? We were thinking a lot about bias, about social and institutional, social constructs, and systemic and institutionalized racism, homophobia. We were looking at how we can raise our awareness and promote equity and inclusivity in our community, and really emphasize social justice. So we put the application out in January. We had over 40 people apply. We only had 25 spots. And so we went through a little bit of a process to narrow it down. While we were hoping to launch in March, due to the school closure, we didn't launch. This work is complicated work, right? In order to engage in conversations about anti-racism, in order to engage in conversations about white privilege, to understand your own unconscious bias and how they manifest themselves in the world, it really takes time to create an emotionally safe space for people to engage in that. And so I made a sort of decision in the moment to hit pause on that, so that we could come together physically before we embarked on this work. But we've been communicating over the course of this time that we've been out of school with the members of the fellowship, and we are excited to get started. It looks like we're going to have a bit of a soft launch this summer with voluntary for people who are able to come in, and then officially kick off in the fall. And our focus will not only be on the professional learning of the people who are part of the fellowship, but then we will be able to turnkey and share information with our colleagues across the district. It's a K-12 representation, so we have teachers from elementary through high school who are going to participate. And we're also going to serve as a sounding board for the district as we consider consultants that we may want to partner with, resources that we may want to use, shifts that we want to make in the curriculum. And so it will inform our perspective in order to help assist and facilitate some of this work broadly across the entire district. So we've kind of, well, I've labeled our team the Chap Equity Warriors, right? Because it's work that we're going to do and we're going to lean into and we're going to work hard. So I'm excited about that. And thank you, Christine, for allowing us to launch this fellowship.
Thank you, Tony. And now, Adam, would you like to talk about some of the curricular discussions that have been happening and then the work that you see engaging in this summer with our faculty?
Yes, thank you. So after our board meeting, you can imagine we had many discussions. For me, mostly engaged with our faculty, and our faculty was incredibly reflective and professional about changes that we could potentially make to improve things. So it was inspiring to have those conversations with our faculty. Everyone that I spoke to had some great ideas about how we could move forward to make things better in our district. And so one thing that has become abundantly clear is that we need to do some work with our digital citizenship curriculum. And that's a fairly large umbrella, but underneath that umbrella typically include things like cyberbullying, hate speech, news and media literacy, one's digital footprint, things like that. So we are committed over the summer to making sure that we enhance our digital citizenship curriculum and have that articulated as a curriculum map K-12 and present that back to the Board of Education. So that's one of our commitments that we're going to work on this summer. And when we go down to the curriculum priorities bullet, several of these things were part of your resolution, but just to reiterate that commitment, we have a part where it's become clear to us with some feedback from students currently and parents, families, alumni, and even our faculty's reflection that we have some things in our curriculum that just shouldn't be there and we need to remove them. And so we have several examples of that where we'll make sure that we do some of that work. It will be ongoing work and long-term work throughout the course of next year as we really do a complete equity audit of our entire curriculum, but we know that we have to take some action over the summer, significant action to address many of the things that have been brought to our attention and some of the things that our faculty has reflected on. We also want to make sure that we widen our perspective and that students have that kind of broad exposure to Black voices, especially, so that they're reading texts and have characters and role models, et cetera. So we're committed to that work. And then finally, we have to really rethink our teaching of contemporary issues. And this was also part of the resolution, which I appreciate this idea, especially as it pertains to systemic racism that we heard a lot at the board meeting. And then we reflected a lot as a district about how we teach history through what lens, and also post-1960s kind of civil rights movement, and how we address these issues with our students throughout their education. So we're committed to doing that work and then presenting to the board at the end of the summer with regard to the actions that we took. We're also committed as part of this, when it comes to that second bullet, I didn't mention, and I want to mention that the CSF has been so generous to grant us just over $30,000 to diversify our elementary school libraries. So that's a really exciting grant. We're going to be doing some work over the summer to make sure that we diversify those libraries over the summer, and also that the district is committing funds to diversify our materials in the middle school and the high school. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention is that we understand we have a lot of work to do in building capacity with our staff. We just heard from Dr. Campbell-Jones, and they're going to do their work with our leadership team to start and our Board of Education. But we do want to build capacity in our staff. And so we have a long-standing partnership with Facing History, and we've asked them to come to give us a little overview of their program. We have done quite a bit of professional development in partnership with Facing History, and we like their frameworks and models and their pedagogical approaches. We think they align really well with what we believe when it comes to good education, and they have some expertise in this area. So Karen is joining us. I think we've Zoomed her over here, and she's turned on her video and her mic there. She gave us a couple of slides ahead of time, so I'm going to turn it over to Karen from Facing History. She can give us an overview.
Thanks, Adam. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. It's been really illuminating to listen in to this conversation this evening. I'm really glad to get to hear what's going on in your district, and just wanted to affirm, as I heard from the presenters earlier, the statement you made earlier. I think it's a really amazing, very clear, authentic articulation of the work that needs to be done. So my name is Karen Schur, and I'm a senior program associate in the New York office of Facing History and Ourselves. We are an educational nonprofit and have been around for over 40 years. On the slide, you can see our mission, which is to use the lessons of history to challenge teachers and their students to stand up to bigotry and hate. It's an ambitious, lofty mission, but we believe in it. And with over 40 years of experience, we know that we have efficacy, that we can impact student feelings of being able to participate in the world around them, standing up in the face of injustice, and being informed civic participants. The way that we do our work is through professional development. And as Adam mentioned, we have a long-standing partnership with Chappaqua. I was looking back to see sort of how long has Facing History worked with your district, and it's been over 20 years in one way or another, all the way from individual teachers at the middle and high school coming to workshops and summer seminars with us, using our resources, all the way to more formal partnerships where we've done district-wide, and particularly with the middle and high school where our work tends to be year-long, partnerships where we offer professional development and coaching for teachers. And just as recently as last week, I actually ran 2 virtual workshops for teachers on navigating difficult conversations, and we worked through some protocols for what it looks like when things get challenging in classrooms. And it was a really rich, wonderful session. I thank the district, Mary Devane in particular, for making that happen. It was great to be in conversation with so many of your teachers. What you'll see on the slide, if you just go back to that slide for one more minute, on the right-hand side is our approach. And so as Adam mentioned, we have a particular pedagogical approach that we apply to humanities classrooms, but many teachers across disciplines find that it's relevant and valuable no matter what they teach. And so we always invite teachers to ask their students about the individual in society. So what is my identity? What factors make up who I am? What is the relationship between who I believe myself to be and the world in which I live? And what happens when those 2 pieces come into tension through stereotypes, through prejudice, through racism? And how do I reconcile those or make sense of those? And then we move into questions of we and they. How are in-groups and out-groups formed? What does membership look like? How does it change due to power, privilege? How does it change in times of fear and crisis? And we introduce those concepts because we want to apply them to a depth approach to case studies in history and literature. And so we have resources that teachers can use to explore particular crisis points in history, whether it's the Armenian genocide, the Holocaust, opportunities for democracy like the Reconstruction era in American history, the Civil Rights Movement, immigration in a changing world, pieces of literature. And so we take those ideas with us when we look at a moment in history or a piece of literature. And what we're trying to do there is uncover not only hidden histories, but also the multiple perspectives that are often lost if you're, sort of moving through history at a fast pace. We want to slow down, and we want to really allow students to reflect on the choices that individuals and groups are making in those moments in history and make connections to the world that students are living in today. So we want them to see those threads that connect us to our past and help us understand the unfinished business we're still wrestling with in the world today. And that's how we move into judgment and legacy. What are those open questions that we were trying to sort of wrestle with 100 years ago, 50 years ago, that we are still wrestling with in society today? And if we can help students understand the relevance between history and now, we can help them become active civic participants. And that's our last piece, which is choosing to participate, where we really want students to finish this journey in a Facing History classroom by understanding what it means to stand up, to vote, to care about issues, to do something in the face of injustice, to take a more informed approach to understanding history so that we can make historically based decisions about the road ahead. And so that's really Facing History's approach, no matter what case study we're looking at in history. And this is where, the questions about critical lenses come in. We are definitely an anti-racist organization, and we want students to understand those, the voices that have been on the margins. We want to bring those to the center. We want to look at who were the upstanders in these moments, both ordinary people, not just the people we put up on pedestals, but individuals making decisions that had an impact on the outcome of history. So that's our work, and that's what we've done with many of your teachers in Chappaqua who are now implementing Facing History, but we want to sort of level that up and invite more teachers into those conversations. And in our professional development, we model pedagogical strategies. So we really engage teachers to understand what it looks like to have a classroom be a democracy. What does it mean to have students at the center where they are having ethical, moral, decision-making conversations through those student-centered strategies that we model when we have teachers in a room together learning about our approach. On the next slide, very briefly, we also have a series that we call Teaching for Equity and Justice, which we wanted to highlight just given the conversation we knew was going to be happening at tonight's meeting. And so unfortunately, my colleague Steve Beckton, who's our Chief Officer for Equity and Inclusion, had to step off the call, but he's really led this work and I'm part of the program team that's delivering that work. So we have these 4 modules and they're sort of laid out. If you keep clicking on the slide, they should show up. So we invite teachers to go on this journey with us, to really think about what it means to establish a brave space for equity, that we need to get comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable. And we want to take teachers safely in and safely out of these conversations, but also sort of take the veneer and the politeness off of the conversation and really understand that we need to wrestle with difficult topics in order to fully understand what it means to have an equity mindset. So the first module is establishing that kind of space. And then because we're, a history organization, it's in our name, we spend time looking at the historical context that has created this construct of race, that it's not just something that emerged, but it was really at these critical moments in history constructed. And if we understand that, then we can begin to deconstruct it because we have agency as well. And from there, we move into this idea of how do we develop those mindsets for equity-based work in classrooms. And we end with something that's more practical, right? So if we understand this journey we've been on, how do we then shift our pedagogy, shift our teaching strategies, shift our curriculum and instruction to be more equity-minded? And I think that's part of the larger prism of work that you're engaging with as a district. So I will pause there. I'm happy to take any questions that folks have.
So I have a question. So
Yes.
I'm wondering, and maybe this is more for our administrators, is this really a self-selected group of teachers who would go through these modules and work with you, or is this somehow like a requirement?
So the Facing History program from the other day was self-selected. It was during the school day, so it was based on teacher schedules. We had about 60 teachers join that session. There have been some trainings in the past where we've designated certain departments and made it required for social studies, for example. Going forward, we'll have to make some decisions about what's required and what's optional for teachers. But I think that we're in a place now where we're ready to lay out some things that are going to be required, certainly as we move forward.
Right. So these are the kinds of things that I think about when I think of the curriculum and what we put in place. And we've talked about some of this already. But there are certain, for instance, major events that we may not cover, such as the Tulsa Race Massacre, or Japanese internment, or the Chinese Exclusion Act. And my concern is how do we broaden that? And even in even in the ways that we teach subjects that we do teach, for instance, The Discovery of America by Christopher Columbus, and the idea of how you can discover a place where people are already existing, or having an exercise in colonialism, which was described to me in one of our focus groups, where the teachers provide an exercise to the students on how to fund your ships, for instance, without acknowledging the suffering of the actual people who were colonialized. And this is where we talk about teaching with compassion. Or an exercise, for instance, in debate and argument-based projects, and having an exercise on the topic of slavery with one side arguing for slavery and one side arguing against, and the impact on Black students, maybe a single Black student in that classroom having to listen to that, and whether something like that is really necessary. So when I think about curriculum and practices in the classroom and classroom activities, and being sensitive in that way, I'm just trying to get at how these programs on curriculum can address, such a broad range of variables and factors, from the topics that are covered to how topics are covered, and how, teachers approach those topics with sensitivity. Not just cultural sensitivity, but just human sensitivity to the students in the classroom. So, and I'm just unclear about how we get to all of that.
So I'll start, and I'm happy to also, invite your administrators to respond if they'd like. But from a facing history perspective, this is long-term change work, meaning that I think it's important to first invite teachers into a conversation about what it means to be a teacher. Why do we teach? What is our why? And then move through this process that I think is very intentional and meditative about the choices that teachers are making, both in terms of the content and the strategies. And I think what we do at Facing History is model through choices we've made about the case studies we have amplified, what it looks like in action to center the voices that have been on the margins, to establish what it looks like to embed intellectual rigor, but also invite emotional engagement and ethical reflection into classrooms. And I think from there, once teachers are immersed in that, they're going to begin to see where those pitfalls and problems exist. And with coaching and support, I think you'll begin to see shifts and changes made, because once your eyes are open to some of the inequities that might exist in the classroom, you're going to, sort of notice them more and more as an educator. And so I think that's our goal at Facing History. We are not a scripted curriculum. We don't have content for every moment in history. I will say, just as a side note, we do have content on all three of the case studies you mentioned, but that doesn't mean we have something for everything. But what we have is an approach, a way of sort of asking questions, bringing students into the center, really modifying the, the way that classrooms are structured. So it's not the teacher as the holder of information, but really co-construction of knowledge in a classroom. But I do think it takes time. So I will say that I think, districts that work with us often partner with us for several years, because it's a, sort of one step at a time, understanding that there, of course, is urgency in some regard, but also that, it takes time to sort of take these things in, digest them, and then understand, how am I going to apply this in my teaching environment?
Thank you.
I've got a question. Is Facing History generally geared to educators at like the secondary or middle levels? I'm just trying to imagine how this looks at, say, first grade.
Right. That's a great question, Holly. And we are definitely explicitly about 6th through 12th grade, mostly because of the case. Like, we were founded as an organization that focused on the Holocaust, and working with adolescent development experts and psychologists, we realized that, that kind of content needs to be, sort of really engaged with a particular age level. And so that was sort of the beginning. Our organization was founded by 2 middle school teachers, so it's sort of baked into our DNA. I will say that there have been times in my career and also in the organization where we have worked with elementary schools, particularly upper elementary, 4th and 5th grade. And I have worked at times with like a K through 8 environment, where some of the younger grades really look more at the vocabulary of being an upstander, not a bystander, and making good choices, and even creatively using some of our pedagogical strategies, like, a big paper silent conversation where students walk around and they respond to, some text. Even children as young as 1st or 2nd grade really can do that work, but we are certainly more situated in secondary.
Thanks.
I had a question. I remember, and I know we didn't have any direct interaction, but I was on the board of the Chappaqua School Foundation years ago when you first came in through a grant from the school foundation in the middle schools, I recall, to do some work around the Holocaust. And I know that you've been working with us for quite a long time, and you do a really excellent job of explaining the process that you go through and the steps in your method, which I think have been really successful. And so we appreciate and we very much look forward to continuing the partnership together. And I'm curious, though, if over the years, since, like you said, that you started like bringing this to middle schoolers around the Holocaust, do you, even though it's a process, are there times like now where you will make suggestions that work well within your framework in terms of actual curriculum or actual events that can help really push this forward? So I don't know how you change that over the years, obviously, to bring in certain events that you think could really be used as a model for your model,
Right. Yeah. So just thanks, Jane. I think just to speak to sort of how we've made the decisions of which content we've explored,
Right.
it's been kind of organic, based on research that helps us understand what's being taught in schools and what's not. And sometimes we wanted to fill in gaps, like, for instance, the Reconstruction era. When I was growing up in the 80s and 90s in suburban New Jersey, it was like a passing, footnote, right? And described as an abject failure. But, if you really explore that history, it was one of the most monumental moments of opportunity for democracy in our country's history. And there was an intense backlash. And then, several Supreme Court cases sort of dismantled all that was possible in that time. Mm-hmm. And what we do with students in that history is really sit with questions about government and state rights and individual rights and risks and opportunities of being an upstander and what actual interracial democracy can and should look like. And we help them then look at other moments in history where there were those similar kinds of opportunities. And we discuss, why was the Obama administration sometimes called the second Reconstruction? Why are we right now in a moment that people are starting to call the third Reconstruction? So helping students see those moments that, previously might not have been centered feels really important. And I'll also say that in recent years, so I've been with Facing History for a little over 6 years. And just in that time, previously I was a Facing History teacher at a public school. So I've been around Facing History for a very long time. Mm-hmm. But in the 6 years that I've been on staff, we have established a very robust current events section to our work because teachers were asking for help. Because like Adam said earlier, it's not just about talking about current events, it's about media literacy. And it's about multiple perspectives and understanding how to understand a reliable source, how to, sort of second double check what you're reading, and understand how people who oppose your viewpoint might see things. And so we met that demand by establishing a really rich collection of resources that we're adding to all the time on our website. And teachers have responded really positively, saying that has been incredibly helpful because they're nervous about teaching current events because they're, scared of being misconstrued as political. They're scared of blowback or pushback from families. And so what we've tried to do is provide, a professional, reputable source to say, you can rely on us to, help you not just decide what to teach, but how to teach it, right? How do you
relate it to the historical event? So it's really a history lesson and it's not a political discussion, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Exactly. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Any other questions?
Kara, we really appreciate you coming tonight. I didn't know if the board had any final presentations questions about Karen's presentation before we move forward.
No, just thank you so much for being with us.
We look forward to our continual work with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Nice to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Everyone, give me a second. I need to back up the presentation. Let me see here. Okay. All right. And Tony, you are up.
Thank you.
Okay.
So also part of our work last year during the 2018-19 school year was a revision, enhancement, and standardization of our district-wide hiring processes and procedures. So when I started in my role somewhere around early winter, we voluntarily gathered a cross-section of the leadership team to review our current practices because there seemed to be inconsistencies in the way hiring occurred across the district. Nothing concerning, but inconsistencies at times, could have been problematic. So we wanted to standardize that process. And one of the things that inspired that work was thinking about the standardization of, the timeline, who's reviewing resumes, what that process looks like, the question development, who's on the committee, and how we can standardize the process in order to mitigate implicit bias, which the research shows clearly does impact interview searches, right? From committee members who are, unconsciously thinking about how they are viewing a candidate, right? And we know that implicit bias is about understanding the attitudes and stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious, manner, right? And so by standardizing a process, our goal was to mitigate some of that implicit bias. So we went through that process. We thought about everything from, like I said, how we review resumes to make sure that we have multiple sets of eyes on resumes, again, to mitigate any bias that might impact a particular resume, right? Some people look for school. Some people look for what experience they had. Some people look for spelling mistakes. Having multiple sets of eyes eliminates or at least decreases the chances for bias. We looked at the construct of the process and how many phases there'd be, who would be on committee interviews, and we went down to looking at the questions and how broad the questions were so that we can really engage candidates to get to know who they were as thinkers and learners. So that was a process that we went through last year, and we saw some really nice shifts in our hiring practices last spring. We also just broadly researched some practices to support the recruitment and hiring of educators of color, knowing that the diversity of our staff was under 10%, right? And that's self-identified. Our teachers are able to report and self-identify as educators of color. And so last year, only 9% of our staff identified as such. When we went through the hiring process in the spring, unfortunately, the results didn't yield the outcomes that I had hoped for and anticipated. We hired about 30 staff members and only one self-identified as a person of color. So we sort of doubled down our efforts at the beginning of this year. We thought about the way we constructed the job descriptions, the wording of our job descriptions, the description of our district so that we can appeal to a broader cross-section of educators in our region. We wanted to make sure that we appealed to underrepresented members of the community in our district. And so we looked at the job descriptions. We thought about where we were posting the positions. We know OLAS and other digital platforms are known in the region. We wanted to get beyond the region. We wanted to attract, candidates from New York City, from upstate, from Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, see how we can diversify our staff. Because again, we know that representation matters for our students to see themselves in their teachers and also to see people who don't look like them. That notion that one of our consultants touched on, windows and mirrors, right? And people represent windows and mirrors as well. So we also participated in a regional diversity recruitment fair, which happened in late February, and we interviewed for a bunch of positions there. And I'm excited to share that currently, while we are still hiring staff, we have about 30% of our new staff members who self-identify as people of color. That's almost like a 400% increase from last year, which I couldn't figure out on my own. By the way, Josh Colwell-Block helped me figure out.
To call in the math person.
To be totally transparent. But that's pretty awesome and exciting. Again, our hiring is not done for this season, but a lot of the credit goes to our leadership team for their efforts in really actively recruiting educators of color. And we know that the recruitment and the hiring is just the beginning. The research is clear that the retention piece is the most critical piece, and we see high rates of turnover in educators of color in communities like ours. So we're really thinking actively about how we can support our teachers of color in our district, thinking about anything from affinity groups to our induction program. And so that's some of the work that's ongoing and will continue moving forward. We also, in our recent conversations with some of our alumni, the idea of an alumni mentorship program came up, specifically for our Black and brown kids. And that came up several times. And so we are going to be developing that mentorship program over the summer and look to launch it next year with our students. What we heard from our students is the experiences they had in our school system, and not just in our school system, but in education broadly, when they learned about Black and brown people, it was often through the lens of slavery or struggle or perseverance. But they wanted to also learn about, Black entrepreneurship and people who were in positions of power currently and could inspire their thinking now, not just through that lens of overcoming and determination, if you will, as it relates to the slavery narrative that they've heard so much about. And so that really prompted that conversation about a mentorship program. And then finally, we are going to be creating a position to support our students, staff, and families of color. We're not exactly sure what the title of the position is and where it will fall in the district, but we want this position to be a resource for our entire community. And whether it's just a sounding board, whether it's a perspective when we're considering curricular decisions, but we are excited about the addition of this position. So.
Thank you, Tony. So I want to talk a little bit more about systems of accountability for us in this work. So one of the challenges that we have is getting a pulse of how the students are feeling and just getting a better handle on the climate within our school districts. So what we did or began to do is we began to identify that there are a bunch of research tools out there that we can administer to our students to take the pulse of the climate within each school community based on age level. So in September, hopefully, depending on what September looks like, we will be administering a climate assessment. But then I also feel like, and that's great quantitative data, but I feel that the best information that I've been able to glean so far from our kids is when I hold randomized focus groups. So given the quantitative results of the climate assessment, I will be holding, and other administrators will be holding randomized focus groups with our students to ask follow-up questions based on that information. So we have some baseline data. We will also be revising the code of conduct this summer, and I just wanted to throw out some guiding questions based on what we're thinking about due to the feedback that we've received through this process. So some of the things that this group will have a stakeholder group working on the code with me over the course of July and August, because this would need to be in place for September. What does our response look like when incidents occur? How do we balance accountability with restorative practices? And how and when do we communicate with the community? So those conversations will take place over the summer. And then we'll have a system of reporting incidents and progress Board of Education. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, revisiting the strategic plan with our larger stakeholder group, and possibly adding a Board of Education strategic question to support the work. And so then I felt it would be important to present deliverables to the community. So in terms of our first meeting in September, this is where we anticipate being based on our summer work. We anticipate sharing with you a professional development plan for all of our staff, and that spans beyond our faculty. It's every staff member that works within our school district community. Revising the code of conduct, a plan for student learning experiences to promote an anti-racism stance, results of preliminary curricular review and identification of curricular shifts as a result of this summer work, diversification of learning experiences based on different perspectives, voices, and authors of color. We will present to the Board of Education community a K-12 digital citizenship curriculum map. We will define our quarterly reporting structure. We will do a full analysis of our hiring, and we'll provide some insight into how we see our future recruitment efforts based on this analysis. We will select the climate assessment tool for our students. We'll establish a student mentoring program with our alumni. We will have a new position established and a process underway to hire this candidate. And then the new Board of Education Advisory Committee would have been established by this point for the community. And that is our presentation. So are there any questions or comments from the Board of Education?
There's a lot. There's so much to say. I don't have questions because and I want to give everyone an opportunity to speak, but I know how much work has gone into this. I know the support that this program has throughout the district, and I know that you've shown it to us throughout the way, and we've had comments, and we've been able to bring in our own focus group feedback to this. And obviously, this is an evolving process, so we intend to bring in more as we learn more from continuing focus groups. And this is a process, but it is a very structured one, and it's a very focused one. And I so appreciate everyone that you brought in here tonight. I think that I want to thank you and the administration for really working tirelessly here and really making sure that we are bringing in the right people to move this and to change the climate here. And everyone has a stake here. And I know it's a lot of work, but I know everybody here, I normally say in this room, but on this screen and on this page, like, everyone wants to do the work and they're very committed. And I really thank you all for coming up with this very detailed and I think very important framework. So I really want to say thank you for all the work that you've put in, and I'll let everybody else, if they have questions or comments, go ahead.
I also want to thank you, Christine, and all the administrators. I know you've worked very hard on this, and I also know that the work started long, before people we're paying attention to this issue. So I want to point that out and appreciate you for that as well. It's a complex issue. It's multifaceted, and there are many, many layers. But you've presented us a plan that matches the complexity of the issue, and you put it together fairly quickly. And I believe that's because a lot of the groundwork was already being laid for it. But now there is a sense of urgency, and it's the same urgency that we talk about when we, go out and, advocate for state funding for schools, and we tell the legislators, if you wait, many more years to do the right thing, that's a child can never go back to the first grade and make that up, or the second grade to make that up. So I am, very concerned about the sense of urgency, because it's about how kids feel about themselves and their experience in our schools. But I think that you put this together in a very, very comprehensive way, and I really appreciate the work and the thoughtfulness that has gone into it. I just have a few points on the new position, because I had sort of mentioning something like an officer of diversity and inclusion, and this was also mentioned in one of the focus groups, and it would be someone to work proactively on these issues. So I'm sure that that's what you had in mind, and I just wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the goals for that position, just very briefly, because I know that we've had a long presentation.
Tony, did you want to lead that conversation, since you have been doing research on what this potential position could look like in our district?
Sure, thank you. So, in terms of this specific type of position, we don't necessarily see it as much in public school districts. We are starting to see more and more of it, which I think is a reflection of the time and where we're moving as a society and the realities that we're grappling with. But certainly in independent schools, they have a history of having a chief equity officer, director of diversity, equity, and inclusivity. And so I've done some research around positions of that nature to get a sense of what they do, right? And they look slightly different in different places. Some are more teacher-oriented, and they sort of are in the teacher unit. Others are more administrative in their role. But their main purpose is to really serve as a lens for everything that happens in the district, but particularly to make sure that the voices and the presence of our Black and Brown and other students of color, their perspectives are represented and are seen, both from an administrative perspective and as an educator, thinker, and learner. And so they can get involved with everything from curricular decisions, from meeting with families, from talking to students, running affinity groups, to helping recruit staff, a more diverse staff. It really kind of runs the gamut. They can be a sounding board. They can be an appeals board for families of color who feel like something has happened to their child and they need somewhere to go to articulate that experience in an unbiased way, if you will. And we know that one of the things that is really powerful about these positions in terms of how effective they are, if it is an educator of color in that position, the rate of effectiveness is significantly higher. And people access and engage that individual in a different kind of way. So that's just some of the work and the preliminary research we've done, but it's not in any way defining what's going to happen, just informing our thinking.
Right. I think it would be important for the students to have someone they feel they could go to and be comfortable with. It's a lot of roles. Are you thinking all of the above, or are you still determining what it could be?
We're still fleshing it out, but I think what's been made very clear from our families and from our students and from our faculties, we need an expert who is a resource for all three of those groups to help navigate really complex issues. And so it was the first comment out of the BSU, or one of the first comments out of the BSU, when we had met with them, that they felt like they needed additional support and at the high school level. And then when I asked them to reflect on their middle school experience, the lack of support there was was not acceptable. So that is the driving point by which this position is made, but we need to expand the scope of what this expert will be, how this expert will be in engaging with our staff. We just need a little bit more time to flush it out before I present to you what we're thinking, which will probably be at the first meeting in July.
Okay.
Because we have to create the position
So
before
we'll
we.
wait here for that.
Yep.
From that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing more.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like a lot of work has been done, but I think we're really still at the beginning of this journey. So I look forward to continuing to work with you all and see where we go. I think we're heading in a good place.
Yeah, I want to also say thank you. And what really seemed to be a salient point that everybody made, from our administration to the experts that you guys have brought in, is that this needs to be a community effort at every level and with every sort of stakeholder group being involved. And I think we've, tried to start that. And obviously all of us are committed to continuing that and continuing to involve multiple stakeholders. And I hope that the, high audience participation rate at these meetings recently will continue, and the community will continue to engage with us and continue to do this work with us, because we need you as stakeholders as well.
Thank you, Hillary.
So that concludes the superintendent's report, and we look forward to sharing our progress in September after we do some incredible work over the summer with our faculty who are ready for it and excited about it.
Many thanks. We are very grateful for the work that you've done this far and the work that we know that you're going to do. So thank you. Okay, we are moving on throughout the rest of our board meeting. Next up is committee reports. I am unsure if we have anything, but I want to just see if anyone has anything to mention. Facilities.
Just to highlight that
policy.
the policy committee will be looking at, of course, the code of conduct, and also the DASA policy 5052 on harassment, bullying, discrimination, prevention, and intervention, which includes racial incidents. And it clearly does include race, but I think we want to highlight that more in the policy. So it's just a matter of wordsmithing. The policy is very extensive, and it was, we put this policy in place, hang on, back in 2013. And at the time, people thought it was really very extensive because it covered acts outside of school district property and not at a school district function. So it actually, it's regarding acts that occur off school property that create or would foreseeably create a risk of substantial disruption within the school environment. This was state law, and at the time people thought it was far-reaching, but I think it would cover a lot of the situations that we've seen. So I just want people to know that this is in our policy. It is in our code of conduct already, because our code of conduct was revised to be consistent with the DASA policy. So it does cover acts taken outside of off-school property. So anyway, I don't want to take up too much time now because we're not discussing that, but we will be at the next policy committee meeting.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Holly.
I just want to know, is the policy committee going to be looking at the mission statement as well, or does that fall outside policy?
The mission statement of the school is not technically a policy, or maybe it is in the policy book, but the policy committee is just a vehicle to bring policies and things like statements to the board, and the board then makes the decisions.
Right. We might have to have a work session about that.
Just like all the other committees. We don't make decisions as the committee members, but we just bring the topics under discussion to the board in a way that makes it easier to take action on.
Holly, I think the mission statement could fall under the communication committee.
It's interesting you said that obviously it is the end of the year. We did not recently have a communications committee meeting, but these are all intertwined, because I think part of this is that We've talked about how we communicate things to the community, our progress, what our code of conduct is, so that people can easily access this, people understand it well, and I think that's going to have to be an interconnected conversation to make sure that the public is aware how to stay in connection with us and know what all of these policies are. And so that is definitely going to be something that communications will be talking about come fall. Anything else to report? I've been asked to take a very, very brief 2-minute break before we move into public comment. So if we could do that and come right back. I know some people have been sitting for a long time. So let's do that, make it really quick, and we will be back for public comment. Okay? Okay, terrific. Thank you, everyone, for allowing us a short break. We are moving into the public comment period of our meeting. For those who haven't been with us before, we welcome public comments, but we ask in respect for each other and each other's time. It is our policy that each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Our clerk will time you, and if you tend to run over, we try and get you to wrap up so you can finish your comments before we move on to the next person. We are always available to be contacted via phone or email if there's something that you want to say and didn't get to. And also, we just want to note that the board members may discuss among themselves any matters that came up during public comment. That's our decision at the end. We will do that at the end of public comment period. Okay, what we do now while we are on Zoom and not in person, there are attendees. You raise your hand in the Zoom and we will move you over as a panelist. And as long as we can get audio and video on you, you can go ahead and give your comment. And again, thanks again for being patient with us if we have any technical problems. So I'm looking at the list of attendees, and the first person with a hand up is Stefan, excuse me if I mispronounce, Prenisinski.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Oh, hi, Stefan. Go ahead. Thank you very much.
So I noticed, Jane, you said that everyone wants to do the work, and earlier Adam had said that he likes the facing history frameworks and models and pedagogical approaches.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually argue that you guys like a whole lot more than that from facing history, because on your message to the community that you released on June 6th, you actually plagiarized their website. You said, quote, "Better address and examine racism, anti-Semitism, and prejudice at pivotal moments in history, and so that we may help students connect choices made in the past made in the past to those they will confront in their own lives." This is a letter that was signed by Jane Shepherdson, Holly McCall, Hillary Grasso, Warren Messner, and Victoria Tipp, 5 of our Chappaqua board members who are in the video call with us today. And now I'm going to read the About Us section from facinghistory.org. "Address racism, anti-Semitism, and prejudice at pivotal moments in history. We help students connect choices made in the past to those they will confront in their own lives." If you guys can't even be bothered to come up with your own response and put it into your own words, why am I supposed to believe you now that you're suddenly really wanting to do the work? Honestly, I appreciate the preemptive nature that you guys are taking and the proactiveness that's going on here, but it's fallen so far short of what the community has asked of you to do in the last meeting. I mean, I thought it was a pretty universal and resounding response from the community that we were expecting you to enforce. Like, I get that, I hear you with that you're saying you're going to address the code of conduct moving forward. You had a great opportunity to just send a clear and united message to the community that racism is not going to be tolerated in our schools. You're asking us to hold you accountable. We're asking you to hold racists accountable. It's really not that difficult. Frankly, I think you guys did an embarrassing job, and I'm ashamed.
Okay. The next person with their hand up is Bhavna Agrawal.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you quite yet. So I'm wondering if you might be able to click to turn your video on. Now we can see you. Terrific.
Okay.
You may go ahead. Thank you so much.
Hi. First of all, thank you very much for doing all the work, and I appreciate the session with Victoria and Holly, I believe.
Bhavna, you're going a little bit in and out with your audio. Sorry, you're freezing up a little bit.
Is this better?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much.
So my question to the school is that why did you choose one company, Campbell Jones, for doing the leadership training, and another one for the faculty training, and especially with facing history that you've been working with them for, I don't know how many, 15, 20 years you said already as a school. Why is that a good choice again?
You know what, Bhavna, this is not a question and answer for the public comment, but we can make comments at the end once everyone has made their statements. So
Okay.
thank you for asking that. It's just not the format of the meeting of a back and forth, but maybe perhaps at the end of public comment, we can get some information to you. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
You so much. I really appreciate that. Next is Ben Stewart.
Hi there. Can you see me? You hear me?
Yes, we can, Ben. How are you? Go right ahead.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Hi. So I am Ben Stewart. I am Greeley class of 2016. And I think something important to note for this meeting was that I was very involved with the theater department in 2015. So watching a lot of the, I've watched the whole board meeting from last week. Obviously, I've watched everything leading up to today. So I'm very familiar with how the district handles incidents, and I feel sort of a very emotional reaction sometimes watching, certain sort of coordinated responses. Because I remember very clearly the day after the Daily Voice reported that Chappaqua was going to be partnering with the PR firm Marathon Strategies. The day that Robert Rhodes, who is obviously no longer part of the district, sent us an email subject line, invitation to think through scenarios, and sat us down in a meeting and told us, I can't tell you not to talk to the media, but don't talk to the media, don't talk to the media, don't talk to the media. I would also like to say that Andrew Corsilia, who is now the...
Ben, you know what? We talk, it is a policy at our board meetings, and I do want to hear what you have to say, but we don't talk about personally identifiable information or personnel or faculty members, that we do not talk about that during public comment. So I would just ask if you, okay?
I'll move later then. The other thing that I would like to bring attention to, somebody who is no longer part of the district, I would like to see some accountability from the district regarding the Michael Taylor case, because the person who was at one time the only Black administrator in the district, who is now not with the district, has publicly alleged that there have been a high number of gross discrimination incidents and retaliations for his own actions to try and do something about it within the school. I haven't heard anything about it really from anyone on any side of anything since obviously all of this has been happening. I have read the suit. I'd like to read just one line. This is a quote from a performance report cited in the lawsuit, which said that Mr. Taylor was overcoming his heritage and acclimating to a new culture, which is some pretty overtly racist language, and that is one of many incidents cited in the lawsuit. And
so, excuse me, we are talking about, again, we're talking about personally identifiable information. There are certain things that are public records that people can talk about. If there are other comments that we would like to make that you want us to hear that aren't targeted regarding a particular individual, we'd be happy to hear that.
So that is a document that is in the public record.
Yes.
I can stop using names, but that quote still stands. And I would like to see some public accountability, some public acknowledgement that the only Black administrator in the district is no longer in the district. And I guess I have had this sort of sinking feeling as I have seen discourse about this in particular, that we have this broad goal right now of amplifying. This is my last sentence. Thank you. Of amplifying Black and POC voices right now, and my fear is that there is sort of a response and implication that, well, yes, we should be amplifying Black and POC voices, but not those Black and POC
Ben,
voices.
okay,
Thank you for
Ben.
your time.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for your comments. Next is Pat Pollock.
Start the video.
Okay, we see you, Pat. Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Okay, go ahead.
I commend the district for these efforts. I think they're absolutely laudable. I love everything that you've proposed. One of the things, though, that the doctors Campbell-Jones mentioned is consistent language. And I think that's really important across the board. And I mean, that should also go to parents, the community, and all the stakeholders. I'm wondering where the opportunity is to get connected to the community. I know that the town is also doing an advisory board. Will the school district work with that board, and will we work together? And will we be able to bring in all the other stakeholders, like the police, like the PTA, like the faith communities?
We can talk about, Pat, thank you. We're going to, that's going to be discussed more in terms of our relationship with that, and we might be able to discuss that more at the end of public comment.
And one other comment, if we had 2 social workers, full-time social workers in the middle school, they clearly could be the diversity officers.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Pat. Is there anything else you'd like to say? You're good?
No.
Okay. Thank you for your
I
comments.
think it's a process, and I think you've begun it, and I'm really proud to say that, to be in this district, to see what's happening now.
Okay, thank you so much, Pat.
Take care.
Okay. Next is Robbie Gottlieb.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Robbie. Yes, we can hear you and see you, so you can go right ahead.
Great. Hi, Robbie Gottlieb, class of 07. Thank you, Christine, Tony, Adam, for sharing your encouraging plan, including Drs. Campbell-Jones's. There are a lot of solid ideas here. I'm still worried about what you all consider to be your responsibilities as educators, and wanted to flag what might be an elephant in the room. Christine told me that you've been working to solve the problem of stress in schools. This is less of a problem unto itself than a symptom of a warped value system that we have a chance to address now. Despite some aspects that are genuinely great, it's apparent that the Chappaqua school culture is toxic. The need to be better than everyone else, and especially to get into the highest ranked college possible, make the community do whatever it can in whatever way they can to feel like it is better than other people. I admit taking part in that when I was a student, but I know now that it was wrong. That narrow-minded focus breeds the insecurity, judgment, and stress that have plagued this community. That desperation also opens the door to discrimination. It seems admirable to strive to be the best, but by bettering ourselves, we push people down, or at least don't object when that happens for other reasons. The idea that you're better than anyone else because you're smarter, more popular, rich, or go to a better college is the Chappaqua bubble. Out in the world, we learn about privilege and that we aren't better than anyone else. In the curriculum review, everything needs to be on the table for the 2021 school year and beyond. This has to include APs. Christine and Tony, you spoke to me about creating and ensuring opportunities. This isn't your entire responsibility. It may be a priority for most Chappaqua families, but going to the best college isn't essential. In other words, in the world, it's not even essential to go to college at all, despite my opinion that it's worth it. It is, though, essential to make a contribution to society. Attending the best college and making a contribution aren't mutually exclusive. This imperative is not only not made clear to your students and families, but not even explicitly encouraged. At graduation, you all remarked how the pandemic has made us cherish our friends, families, and teachers. My biggest takeaway from COVID is that each person, no matter their race, gender, age, or any other inherent distinguishing part of their identity, can impact the broader community, if not the world. Each person decides if that's for the better or for the worse. If they have a lapse in judgment or don't know how their actions affect others or how some people are more vulnerable, they can cause unnecessary pain and even cost someone their life. They can also critically shield people from harm, even strangers, just by being sensitive and without too much discomfort. Last time I said that you're either trying to shape students into warriors for social justice or you're failing. You must start educating students how their actions impact their community and that their job is to impact it for the better. That's the culture that our schools must foster. As Christine suggested earlier, please rewrite the district mission statement to reflect this positive impact, and also, critically, open up that rewriting process to the community, not just the board. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Robbie. Next with their hand up is Ethelyn Ziegler.
My funny picture. There we go.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now we've got you, so you can go ahead.
And I've got my daughter, Jordan Ziegler, here too. Comment is that given that the district has been working with Facing History for the past 20 years, I'd like to hear about how the district has measured or is measuring the progress that's been made in the work with Facing History thus far. It bears repeating that the issue of racism needs to be addressed with a sense of urgency, and we can't wait another 20 years for measurable results.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to say, or you're good? Okay, thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. I do not see any other hands up. So is there any discussion or anything anyone would like to say at the conclusion now of public comment? Oops, you're muted, Christine.
Hillary, do you want me to start, or did you want to say something, Hillary?
I was actually going to ask you if you would speak to the two parents' questions you asked about Facing History.
Right. So I want to share that our professional development approach is not going to be, with our faculty, isn't going to be Facing History. That's a part of our curriculum, and we're going to be enhancing our relationship with them in terms of leveraging their resources to help facilitate work in our curriculum areas that's beyond what they've currently been supporting us with. But our pedagogical approach with our faculty around issues of social justice and racism will be vetted out over the summer with their input. So the leadership team will be engaged in professional development this summer. But the faculty, their plan of action will include their voice in those decisions, and we'll be coming back to you in September and sharing with you how we see our faculty and staff moving forward with their training. What we should not do, what doesn't work in education, is for us to dictate how we're going to move forward in isolation without the collective voice of the people that we're working with, which is why we need more time in order to facilitate that process with our staff. So I would just share, well, yes, Facing History is a part of our work here, and we're going to be enhancing our resources and their reach into our classrooms. That's not going to be the foundation for our professional development with our faculty. They will be a part of that decision-making process, and then we'll be presenting that to you in September after we do that work collectively together. Yeah. I also want to thank, I've had a lot of conversations. I've met with alumni. I have never been in a situation where, in a district where we've had such an active alumni response. And so I've really appreciated, I know Robbie had come in today and he spoke about his conversation with Tony and I, and he's just one example of many conversations that I've had with alumni that have been really honest and powerful, and whose thinking have influenced our thinking around this issue and how to move forward. So I want to express my gratitude publicly for that element of conversation, that dynamic that I've never really had happen before since I've been working in schools. And so I think it's really important, and I know a lot of alumni spoke at the June 8th meeting, and one of the challenges is that there's not an alumni association, like a PTA association or some kind of way to organize. But I would say that I have appreciated all my conversations, one-to-one and group conversations with our former students to help enlighten their own thinking around these important issues. And I hope that they continue. And I look forward to their continuation because I think it makes us better. So I wanted to share that now.
No, thank you. And I think that's helpful. I was just going to say, as opposed to if there was any way also to touch on how we have an ongoing relationship with Facing History, but how we brought in the other people or the particular people to help us, if there's any way you could answer that as well.
We did. So that was great. So we reached out to our colleagues, and they came highly recommended to do this work with us based on their experiences in other districts. Chester, and then you, of course, do your research and your vetting, and based on our interactions and our interviews with their team and what we need, we feel like that they are perfect for the type of work that our leadership team needs to engage in immediately over the summer. So we're really looking forward to our partnership with them.
Okay. Great. Do any of the other board members have anything that they wanted to say?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Pat Pollock for her time. I mean, we have two different organizations. There's a school organization, the school board, and there's a town organization, the town board, town council. And we don't work together on a daily basis, but we do work together. We work together in many ways. Our administrations work together, the boards work together. So whether, I know each of us will have our own committees looking at this, and I would hope that we could probably have maybe a liaison from someone from the board or the administration to the town, their committee, and maybe we can have somebody from the town or town administration to our committee, so we can make sure that we're working together, not going different directions. But again, we do have separate organizations and we do have different missions, similar but different.
Warren,
Let's go ahead, Holly.
I would just echo what you said. And while we have some similar goals when it comes to our community and where we'd like to go, we also don't have the same set of constituents either. So we have to partner where we can, but we really are separate and we'll have our own paths.
And we do partner. I mean, we partner in everything from using school facilities. The town uses school facilities. The school uses some town facilities. We share things. We do. There are a lot of things we do together. I think we can do this together. I think it's just that we probably have two separate committees.
Right. I think it's important, as we've talked about, that we each have to have it because the school has a different set of interests in terms of shaping the curriculum and codes of conduct and things like that, even though we all have similarly aligned goals. But we have all been talking about the fact that we will be in discussions with the town to make sure that there is alignment and that we do keep abreast of what each other's doing, and whether that's through a formal liaison or sometimes when we have similar committees, we schedule meetings, etc. So we absolutely will be coordinating with the town to make sure that we are all on the same page. Anything else before we move on? Okay, thank you, everyone. And thank you all for your public comments tonight. We are moving on to item number 3, approvals and ratifications. I'd like to take items 3.1 through 3.3 together. This is, be it resolved that the Board of Education accepts these are the minutes for the June 3rd, 2020 board meeting, the June 8th, 2020 special board meeting, and the June 17th, 2020 special board meeting. Can I have a motion to approve items 3.1 through 3.3?
Move.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Can I have a second? Thanks, Vicki. I think you might still be muted. I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry, Vicki.
Second, sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We're moving on to item 3.4. I will move this, and then I'm going to maybe ask Christine to explain this very briefly. This is a motion for policy number 9040, non-aligned administrative personnel policy, first reading and adoption. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby waives a second reading of policy 9040, non-aligned administrative personnel policy, and be it further resolved that upon the first reading of this policy as presented at this meeting, the Board of Education hereby adopts policy 9040, non-aligned administrative personnel policy. May I have a second for that? Anyone?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Vicki. And I'd say any questions or discussions, but first let me just let Christine explain briefly because there's a quick explanation.
All we had to just update our titles in the district office because we've changed titles of some positions, and then we added the assistant superintendent for pupil personnel services. So that all needs to be reflected in this policy due to contractual reasons. So it's just language associated with the people who are working here to make sure it's reflected in the policy that's tied to their contract.
Right. So does anyone else have any questions or comments about that? Okay, all in favor of item 3.4, policy number 9040, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, that passes. Okay, Christine,
I recommend 4.1 instructional as presented. Thank you, Tony, for all the work to get this ready for today.
Yeah.
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation for item 4.1.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Any questions or comments about 4.1? My only comment is, like, this was a lot of work, Tony, and we really, really appreciate all the work you've done for our hires and everything. It's really tremendous and in a very short period of time. So thank you very much on behalf of all of us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of 4.1?
Aye.
I recommend 4.2 non-instructional as presented.
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation for item 4.2.
I will second 4.2. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we are moving to item number 5. Might be the lengthiest one we've had, consent agenda, since the beginning of the year. Not surprising, because at the end of the year we need to renew or get a bunch of stuff in there that we can get all of our contracts signed, etc. This is our consent agenda, and it's where we make effective use of our time by adopting in a single motion relatively routine matters. Some of them were gone over tonight by Adam for professional development. These are also our CSE summaries. There's a lot of agreements for services, bid renewals, and that sort of thing that allows the district to continue to function. So there are a lot of items. It's actually from item 5.1 through, I have to turn my pages, excuse me, tonight, down through item 5.41. A lot of resolutions in there, but again, this is all business of the district. So we are taking them in a single motion, and I'd like to have a motion to approve items 5.1 through 5.41.
I'll move.
Thank you, Holly. Can I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Any questions about any particular items in here?
I just want to note, and we touched on this earlier on, but I just want to thank again the PTA for their generous donation of $15,000. It's under item 5.13 for the Plant Science and Bioclimatic Center at Horace Greeley.
Agreed.
Agreed, and I want to thank them. They've been incredibly supportive, just to piggyback on what Christine said earlier in the meeting. They're always incredibly supportive, but they've been unbelievably supportive throughout this whole year, and especially in light of the pandemic and changes we've had to make. So in addition to this very generous contribution, they've really supported a lot of work that's had to be done this year. So a big thank you to them. Any other questions or comments about the consent agenda? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Facilities, be it resolved, this is item number 6, that the Board of Education acknowledges change orders approved by the superintendent per board resolution adopted June 14th. So we are moving to acknowledge the change orders that are listed in items 6.1 through 6.5. So I'll move to acknowledge the change orders. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Any questions about anything in item 6? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Financials, I'd like to take items 7.1 through 7.5 together. This is the acknowledging receipt of the revenue status report for April 2020, the appropriation status report also for April 2020, the revenue status report for May 2020, the appropriation status report for May of 2020, and acknowledging receipt of the treasurer's report for May of 2020. Can I have a motion to approve items 7.1 through 7.5?
So moved.
Thank you, Vicki. May I have a second? Thank you, Hillary. Any questions about the financials this evening? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Notice of future meetings. Next up is July 6th through 7th of 2020. That is the board and administrators receipt. And then our annual reorganization meeting will take place on July 8th at 7:30 p.m. And our next meeting after that is in August 5th. That is the tax warrant meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting at 10:07 p.m.? Thank you, Holly. Can I have a second? Anyone? I'll second that. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you again for this presentation.
Thank
Everybody
you.
have a good night.
Bye.